We made it.
We made it through the week. It's been hard.
It's been a week.
First full week of holidayness. It's
Mhm.
kicking my butt. Also, if you really enjoyed the audio from last episode, we're sorry because I forgot got the other microphone that Jennifer got. And so I'm using my old mic this week. I'll have the other mic eventually or after the holidays. So I did like how we sounded. So
Yeah. So I'm excited about this one.
yes, me too. I'm really excited. So I'm Kristen, by the way.
Oh, hey, yeah. Hey, welcome to our podcast. This is
Yes.
Haunted or Hoax, and that over there is Kristen.
And that over there is Jennifer. Um
Oops.
we're good. We're good.
I am very excited if you can't tell.
Yes. So I do all of the ghostly rumors and legends, and if you've been here, and then Jennifer does all the history stuff. But usually I see a little bit of the history while I'm doing my research, and she sees a little bit of the ghostly stuff while she does her research, but we're kind of like totally blind on each side. I have no idea what you're going to share with me.
Yeah, no, I didn't see any paranormal anything. I just saw like the alleged legends, and then that's it. So if y'all don't know what we're talking about, because we haven't told you what we're talking about.
All right. We're talking about the Hinsdale House in Hinsdale, New York. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So originally I had a Facebook user suggest in a comment, I think maybe a specific place. I can't find the comment now, but all I had written down was Queen Anne in New York. And that's like a type of house. It's not an actual place or anything. But when I typed that in, a related house was the Hinsdale House, and it looked pretty juicy. So we're going with that one this week.
Yeah. And it is definitely a lot.
I mean, it has a little bit of everything, which we've had experience before, like a little, what's it called? Potpourri. Is that what it's called? A cornucopia?
Cornucopia.
Potpourri is kind of the same. It's like a mix of things.
There's a lot of fragrance going on with this house.
It's very fragrant. Cornucopia, maybe, of things going on in this house. And so I guess I'll just get started with me today.
Yeah, no, you go for it. Dude,
okay.
Just tell me all about it because I am interested to know what people say about this house.
So the Hinsdale House first became noteworthy after the book called An Echo of a Haunting was published. It was written by Clara Miller, who's actually, her married name is Clara Dandy, and it's actually her family's experiences in the house. So yeah, I didn't read this book. Are we surprised? Absolutely not. I read a little excerpt of it. It's basically like a family diary of experiences written by Clara. Clara and her husband Phil lived in the house along with their children in the early 1970s. Right away off the bat, this was giving me huge Amityville vibes.
Isn't it weird how like that's a constant theme?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I want to know, it says early 1970s is when they lived there. And I guess you would consider Amityville also early 1970s, but that was like 1973.
Like, wasn't it mid 1970s?
Yeah. So I wonder if, so the Dandys lived in their haunted home for a 16-month period between 1973 July and October 1974. So pretty much like around the same time that Amityville happened with the DeFeo family and everything. So I don't know, maybe there's like just a network of haunted houses.
It's a portal.
It's a vortex of activity going on in New York.
The entire state of New York is a vortex.
Exactly. So they lived there with their children, Mike, who was 17, Beth, 16, Laura, 12, Mary, 11. They said a lot of things were going on in this house. Mary's room was specifically active. She would hear footsteps, screaming, kind of a la the Bell Witch with that daughter of the family. Mary was the youngest, and she experienced most of the the haunting. A priest from St. Bonaventure. I'm not going to say
Bonaventure.
Bonaventure. See, I'm not going to be saying anything right tonight.
Oh no, the names are hard. I only know how to say that because of the Bonaventure Cemetery, the famous cemetery in Savannah.
Oh, okay.
That has the Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil statue.
Right, right. I don't think I've been to that one. We'll have to go
Oh,
next
really?
time. I don't think so.
Well, maybe we'll put that on the itinerary.
Yes. But a priest from St. Bonaventure University came to perform an exorcism more than once, which always worked for a while, but then the activity would start up again. Mrs. Miller or Miss Miller, Clara, would tell stories of a dancing ghost, unexplainable choir singing in the woods,
Mm.
and a young dark haired woman walking around their house. Randy Carr, who was a friend of the family to the Dandy family, he appeared both in the book, Echoing of a Haunting, and they also did a version of the story on A Haunting, that TV show. They did
Mhm.
like dramatic reenactments. I love that show. I would fall asleep to it like every afternoon after school. But he also showed up as like an interviewee on that show. He was friends with Mike, the
Mhm.
son, and he frequently spent time in the house visiting them. He remembers walking into a specific bedroom in the middle of August and being able to see his breath. Like there was just a
Mm.
unmistakable chill in the room. He also recalls driving back to the house after he and Mike chased what they thought were like onlookers or like people trespassing on the property. He got in the car, they took off down their road to see if there were, any kids back there. On their way back, they actually saw an indentation in the car seat with them, but there was nobody there. And it actually like moved as somebody was
Mm.
shifting in
Mm-mm.
the back seat. It would sink it down and then move back up.
I don't like that.
So I don't like that either. I have enough trouble driving to like not have a backseat driving ghost
Mhm.
along for the ride. When they did the exorcism, it was said that the house started to shake. It sounded like a crying noise was coming from the house. Like the windows were like screaming,
Hmm.
which is disturbing.
It's quite the draft.
Yes. Other things that have, I guess, taken place or people have said surrounds this house are mostly the woods. It's supposedly a huge Indian burial ground. William P. Robertson, who wrote historical fiction, includes the story of this house in his Hinsdale horror section. He spoke to Robert Dark Owl, who is a Seneca from the Seneca tribe.
Mhm.
He had visited with a shaman in Hinsdale while doing research on his ancestry, and the shaman had told Robert that the Senecas living in the area had committed an unnamed transgression that led to their extermination. And that was why there was like mass graves of Native Americans on the
Mm.
land. Something happened and there was like a mass murder of these people. Robertson also tells stories of animal apparitions and children living in the house waking with burn marks. Dark Owl says he's seen shadow people peering from the windows and they all had haunted eyes. He's also heard chanting in the woods and seen some animal apparitions. This house sat vacant for a long time. And then Daniel Clays bought it, and that's kind of where his chapter started
Mhm.
with the Hinsdale House. At first, he just opened it up for paranormal investigations. He made it a little bit more functional, but he kept all the original furniture that the Dandies left behind. And I know how you feel about that.
You don't keep the bed frames.
You don't keep, they had the couch, they had the creepy dolls.
Well, okay, but this family didn't get murdered in the house, so I'd be a little bit more okay with it.
Okay, so if it's just haunted furniture from like a haunting that was already there,
Well, it sounds like it was already there, so it really had nothing to do with the
that's
interior
true.
design.
That's true. It didn't just suddenly start haunting them because
Correct.
they didn't like their curtain patterns.
No,
I guess it's okay
wasn't a
then.
fan of the tweed.
We have some caveats of what is okay and what isn't okay when you keep furniture.
It's really just if someone's been murdered on your sofa, don't keep it.
I mean, a good rule of thumb. But how
Yeah.
do you know if you're thrifting if that's going to be a murder couch or not?
That's ignorance is bliss at that point.
You never know, Try to grill your local Goodwill workers before you take the couch home, I guess.
If it has a mysterious stain, just don't be the one to flip the cushion over. Just don't do it.
Just bypass it. He leads a lot of investigation teams in the hopes of finding some sort of like paranormal activity, some solid evidence. He is also the co-founder of the Greater Western New York Paranormal Society. A lot of paranormal society founders end up owning haunted houses. Who knew? He believes the paranormal activity goes all the way back to 1799 to the Native American massacre. He thinks that's what kind of triggered all of the activity.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he has seen shadow figures. He's gotten some electronic voice phenomenon, objects moving around, even full body apparitions. However, if you go to hauntedhinsdalehouse.com, there are none of these things online. It just prompts you to take a tour and pay for a tour, which I want to kind of have a little bit of a taste of what you're going to show me.
Well, that website is lacking in a lot, in
Yeah.
my opinion. It had nothing.
Nothing. And it's like, I guess he just thinks, oh, the house is going to speak for itself. It's like, we need a little bit of information,
Yeah.
So Mary Ball has come to the house and run tours for many years. She had an experience where her son, who is handicapped, was sitting on one of the beds in the bedrooms. He didn't know the stories of the houses, she claims. He just knew it was haunted. He didn't know anything about the hauntings. He just knew that his mom ran a haunted house tour.
Mm-hmm.
He said he looked out the window and saw his dad standing out by the fire. And when he looked back at Mary, he said, "Who's that angry Native American staring at Daddy?" Like a full body apparition was standing next to his dad by the fire.
That seems like an oddly specific quote.
Right. And then he's like, it's like she's been to the house several times and runs tours, and he doesn't know anything about what's going on. Hinsdale is not from what I saw, a huge, bustling, sort of metropolitan area.
It is not.
I feel like Hinsdale is very small, and I feel like everyone who lives in Hinsdale knows about this house.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it hard to believe that her son wouldn't know what was going on. I can't call this kid a liar or his mom.
Maybe he was just a little misquoted. Man.
Some other rumors and like horrific things that have supposedly happened on the property and at Hinsdale House are a pair of brothers who lived at the Hinsdale House, raided passing stagecoaches, robbed and killed the occupants, and then buried them either in the cellar or in the hills behind the house. That's the only information I got about that.
Have we checked the cellar?
We have not checked the cellar.
Oh, you just think there's bodies buried there?
No, they claim it.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's probably like the number one place you hide bodies, right? Is the cellar.
In the cellar?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, if I was under the assumption that there were bodies buried in my cellar, I'd probably, again, call a professional and get that checked out.
Then the hauntings might go away, and then who would you sell tours to?
That doesn't seem like the right order of priorities.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it, but that is, the business mentality. This is why we couldn't own a haunted house and sell tours.
I'm going to touch on that later on.
Okay, perfect.
I cannot wait.
There's other rumors that I heard in a episode of Paranormal Lockdown with Nick and Katrina. Nick, for those of you who might not know, was an OG of Ghost Adventures, and then him and Zach Bagans had some sort of falling out, and he made his own show. The narrator in this episode, at the very beginning, introducing the Hinsdale House, is 10 out of 10, hauntingly dramatic. Like, perfect, get you into the mood ghost story sort of voice. I was envious. But they said
what's your best impression?
He was like, in the countryside of Hinsdale, New York. It was like very just like
this sounds like a
dark
great movie trailer.
Yes, it was kind of was. And then it had like the spooky, scary music in the background. It was a good setup. But Nick and Katrina had mentioned a few entities of a boy who was killed in a buzzsaw accident. That's all they said. They didn't say a time frame or anything about that. They just said a boy was killed in a buzzsaw accident. Similarly, they said a woman was hung by a tree somewhere in the property. The rumor has it was she was unwed and pregnant, so she was hung.
Scandal.
Yes. Nathaniel Hawthorne heard about this story, and that's why we had the Scarlet Letter, and we're all tortured in 10th grade. You can thank the Hinsdale House. And then the inside is just a dark entity. So, of course, with any show that has 10 degrees of Zach Bagans, a dark entity always means a demon. Nick, right off the bat, said that he had a dream about a little girl's spirit pulling him to this property before he even got there. Because I guess, like, over the years of being on Ghost Adventures, Nick has become like some sort of empath.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Like, do him and Zach tend to have like dreams and almost premonitions?
And things always like follow them home and everything. But see, Nick is a lot more subtle about it. And Zach is a little bit more, he's got the flair. He's got the pizzazz, the showmanship. Whereas Nick, honestly, by the end of every episode, you're like very concerned about his mental health. Like,
you're not wrong.
Right. He's like sad boy needs therapy, Zach Bagans. And
somebody help him. Shut that guy up. This guy's having a crisis.
Exactly. So he was already feeling it as soon as they walked in, of course. Katrina also, I'm guessing, is an empath. She always feels like she can't breathe in places with heavy energy, all that sort of thing. They meet with a medium called Tim Shaw. Look, I'm British now. I don't say named, I say called. That's what they say in the UK. I've been watching too many UK YouTubers. Sorry about that.
I didn't even pick up on it.
He has been to the house many times. He doesn't go into Mary Dandy's room because it makes him sad and nauseous. He says that most of the activity is in Mary's room. Mary's room, when they go upstairs, is covered in dun 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 flies. Swarms of flies at the window.
But where did they come from? Did somebody leave the window open?
No, well, they say that they just are there randomly all the time. However, this house is not in the episode, the house is not very well kept. So it could be that the house's windows are not that secure.
Or there are corpses in the basement.
I mean, they're reacting to the bodies in the cellar. But they are warned. Corpses. How do you say it? Corpses. Anyway. But they're
gonna put that on our merch.
Yes. Corpses. Corpses. That's how you
Corpus Christi.
But okay, so they're told not to sleep in Mary's room. So I bet someone sleeps in that room. They get a whole bunch of negative feelings from this room the first day that they're there. They do an EVP session in that room, and they ask some questions. And every time they ask a question, the flies start to like fly around more aggressively, they say. They don't capture this.
I was going to ask that. Were they like clocking them or something? Yeah,
I don't know. They were like, I guess it was a wide shot, so you could kind of see the flies, but they didn't seem more or less aggressive to me when they were asking questions. But I don't know, maybe the demon was like, no, don't ask me that. Or the energy flies were feeding off the bad energy. They play the EVP back, and when they ask if somebody's in the room, they hear an EVP that says yes. It is very faint, but I do hear it. They call in a psychic named Tony Spera, who is a religious demonologist. And this was actually really cool. I lost my mind a little bit. He feels like someone has struck him in the head when he enters the house. And he says that that means like 100% demon-like behavior. Apparently, if you go into a house and it feels like you've been hit in the head, that's a demon. I mean, just so you know, that's not a demon. That's my cat.
How pleasant would that be, though?
Right. So while they're talking, they mention Amityville, which was like, oh, holy shit, they're actually going to make a connection between these two. And they mention Amityville because Lorraine and Ed Warren investigated this house.
No way.
Yes. And you know why he knows that? Because Tony is Lorraine and Ed's son-in-law. He's married to their daughter. He calls her on the phone. My mind was blown when I saw this.
Okay, no, I had to get the
You had to get it together. You were so shocked.
I had to get the connections, the family tree. I had to grow the tree in my head because for some reason at first I thought you meant the daughter of the Lutzes.
No.
You meant the daughter of
Ed
Ed
and Lorraine's daughter is married to Tony. Isn't that wild? They called her and she says she remembers the Hinsdale house. She would never live in Hinsdale at all because it's supposedly the whole town has a negative feeling. She said that Mary's room made her feel strangled, which is like coincides with both Nick and Katrina feeling suffocated when they're in Mary's room. They also ask her what Nick specifically should do after visiting the house. And she says, go to church. She said, cleanse your spirit because you're going to need it. Along with the native burial grounds coming back into play, Tony also claims satanic rituals have happened on the property. He doesn't go into more detail. He also says 10 years ago, a man shot his brother in cold blood in the woods. Again, he doesn't go into more detail about that. I'm maybe drawing a connection between the brothers that raided stagecoaches and killed people, and maybe like that was a dispute. I'm totally making things up as I go along to try to connect all these random stories. But they go into lockdown. If you don't know if you don't know how paranormal lockdown works, they stay there for 48 hours. They spend the night 2 nights in a row, and then they try to gather evidence. Most of the time, it's just Nick having really bad feelings and Katrina being worried and looking like she's going to cry for him at any second, which is my relationship. I look like I'm losing my mind, and Zach looks
That's on. So sweet.
So sweet. Immediately in lockdown at night, Katrina goes down to the basement. As soon as she gets down there, you hear heavy breathing on the camera, like the static camera that's set up behind her. And Nick and the other cameraman are upstairs, so nowhere near this camera. And it sounded, I was like, who is breathing into this camera? And she was like, did you hear that? Called up to them. And I was like, oh, fuck. I actually heard something that they heard in real time. I didn't have to replay it 3 times. While she was in the basement, she asks if anybody's stuck there. If so, who? She gets an EVP that says, supposedly, where's Nick? And she shows it to Nick. And they're both like, it says, where's Nick? It's debatable. It's very staticky. I don't really know what they're saying. But of course, Nick is always the one that's targeted. So they also get an EVP that says get out when they're in an upstairs area near Mary's room. When they re-enter Mary's room, they start to feel like a tingling sensation. Katrina described it as like when you put your hand up to a TV, it feels like staticky against your like
electricity.
Yeah. And as soon as they're like talking about that, Nick yelps and quickly like jumps out of the room, and he claims he was scratched on the hand. There was a red mark. He could have also scratched his own hand. I'm just saying. Nothing really happens that first night besides that. Nick slept outside Mary's room, not in her room, so I was kind of wrong. They go to the tree where supposedly 100 years ago, a woman was hung there for being pregnant and unmarried, like I said. They do an EVP session. Katrina asks if the place is forbidden, and they hear a woman's voice say, yes, it is. I did hear that. The EVP was pretty clear, and it does say, yes, it is. Maybe they just don't want you on their property because you're just stirring shit up. I don't know.
Right.
At night, Nick claims he hears chanting. You can't get it on the video camera. They also hear some coyotes howling, and they're very close, like so close they start to run back to the house because like you can hear these coyotes.
Ugh.
And that is what you should be worried about when you're in the woods alone. Not necessarily ghosts, but animals that will attack you.
And if you haven't heard coyotes just like out in the middle of the woods, it is one of the most eerie things you will ever hear.
It like sent a shiver down my spine when I
Mm-hmm.
like heard it. I was like, you guys got to get out of there. So they end up staying up all night that last night to get as much evidence as they can. They hear dragging sounds. He hears thumping upstairs and runs up, and Katrina in the woods hears like footsteps coming toward her. So they kind of split up that last night. Sitting on Mary's bed, Nick hears some footsteps in the hall. He seems very distraught, and then he becomes possessed.
Oh,
But it's like a subtle possession. Like he's just really aggressive, and he's like laying down on the bed yelling like he's like yelling over and over again, I need to know what happens when you die. And like same. But I don't know if the ghosts are going to answer you.
is this him saying he needs to know what happens when he dies, or is that the thing that's already dead possessing him saying he needs to know?
I think it's like him, but he's just feeling like the aggression of like something trying to possess him.
I
And so
see.
he's like yelling. He's recording this whole time,
Mm-hmm.
EVPs. So he goes back to listen to the EVPs. And just as he's sitting on the bed listening to these EVPs of him yelling like crazy things, his camera battery dies, but like they don't say that. So it really looks like he just disappears for a second.
Oh gosh.
And then he comes back into frame. He's like, sorry, my camera battery died. Like 1 minute he's on the bed, and then the next he's like gone because he was changing his battery. And I was like, what the fuck happened? This is like an actual possession,
It is
kidnapping.
a vortex.
It's a vortex. But no, it was just his camera battery died and he was changing it. He gets an EVP from when he says, what happens when we die? On that EVP, it says, there is no heaven, supposedly. I got the no, but I didn't hear the rest in this EVP. But remember that, okay? Because it comes up later elsewhere. He comes downstairs. The house's door is wide open when it was supposed to be shut. And Katrina is out in the woods, and suddenly you get her perspective, and like Nick is just screaming. She comes back and she says he looks nuts. And he's like mumbling to himself. And she says he doesn't look like Nick, which is true. He has like these wide eyes, like you did earlier.
I didn't though.
But he looks like he's on drugs. Ghost hunting is a drug for Nick. Like,
I mean, that's like it really could be a thing.
yeah, I think that he really gets
Like a
some
high
sort
from it.
of high from just being in these really intense stress, fear inducing situations. And then at the end of the episode, they say that the feelings and the effects linger. Obviously, something follows Nick home. He has nightmares and he hears banging in his basement. EVPs from the owner of the Hinsdale House have a whole bunch of EVPs supposedly of people saying, where's Nick? Nick eventually undergoes a spiritual cleansing to protect his family. He must be cleansed a lot.
He's very clean.
He's very spiritually squeaky. So that was Paranormal Lockdown. They didn't get a ton of evidence or photographic evidence or video evidence. They just got mainly EVPs.
It sounds
Really,
like a super intense episode though.
it was super intense. It was very emotional for Nick and Katrina. They said that it was a very heavy energy.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite part of researching this whole thing was the Hinsdale House 2019 movie that I watched. Did I read the book? No. Did I ever finish listening to Amityville? Also no. Did I watch this movie that was an hour and 5 minutes long? You bet you I did.
An hour and 5 minutes is not that bad.
It was not that bad at all. They call it an indie film. They call it a film, which is a stretch.
Extended YouTube video, more say.
Yes, it really was. The camera work was shoddy, the script was bad, the acting was bad, and it's been billed as like Paranormal Activity mixed with Blair Witch Project.
Mm.
You open up to this guy having this horrible dream, like this nightmare of being chased through a house, the Hinsdale house, and everything is like in like a red filter. And it's Steve Stanlis, who wrote, directed, and plays the director in the movie.
Oh, it's
So
like
he's,
director Inception.
yes. So he, in the beginning, it opens up as him having this horrible nightmare and this demon chasing him through the house. This demon, like you're supposed to, it doesn't ever show it. You're supposed to get that feeling. And he's against the door and it keeps saying, there is no heaven. There is no heaven. There is no heaven. Like God doesn't live here. And if you remember, that's the EVP that Nick and Katrina got. There is no heaven. Paranormal Lockdown came out before this movie.
Oh,
So they took that line from Paranormal Lockdown. And as I was watching this movie, it came to me that they used a lot of what they saw in Paranormal Lockdown in this movie, along with just random things that they did a quick Google search with.
mm.
So it was very interesting. The director character and also the director, Steve, he plays the director character's name is Polly. And he is supposed to be like this, I don't know, big shot director. And he's sleeping with one of the stars.
Ooh.
And that's the reason why she's like the star in it. And all the other girls are mad about it. They're all super upset, of course, because, girls hate other girls all the time. We
We're
can't ever
already
get
in
along.
no, we're in a super original plot.
Right. They have like these security camera shots where like it just pans out to like the security camera GoPro footage of the outdoors or a specific bedroom. And you would think that these would have a point. They do not.
Mm.
In fact, they just stay on the screen just long enough to make me annoyed because it just filters through these weird grainy TV filters. And then it finally does like that little like TV glitching thing
Mm-hmm.
and then changes to like real life, quote unquote. There's no point to them. Some of the security camera shots have a like beam of light slowly going through them, which I'm guessing is supposed to be a spirit. But I don't know because everything else with this movie, it has no plot. It doesn't explain anything. Literally, somebody says, "Why is this house haunted?" And it goes, "Well, I'll tell you." And it cuts away from them and then just has shots of the woods with Native Americans chanting for way too long. And then it comes back and he says, and that's the story of the Hinsdale House. It doesn't explain anything.
Because they don't know.
Spoiler alert, if you want to watch this movie, I'm sorry. You can still go and laugh or cry. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do.
You did both.
I did both. All of the actors and Polly end up like, I guess being like, they all get picked off one by one. Like one of them runs into the lake. One of them's hung by a tree. One of them, they each disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very end of the movie, the only girl that's left is this like really pretty blonde girl who is like freaking out. And they're all in a circle looking straight up at the sky. I'll do my best impression, okay? You guys are gonna get an A+ impression. They're all staring up at the sky and they have this really bad like Halloween store zombie makeup on.
Oh boy.
And they're all going, and this scene went on for almost 10 minutes of them doing that and her on her knees outside of the circle, fake crying hysterically. This girl was giving the performance of her life, and it wasn't enough to save this movie.
For 10 minutes?
10 minutes. I was like, oh my gosh. Have you seen Midsummer?
That's exactly where I was going to ask you. That scene.
Yes.
There were many scenes actually that lasted too long, but especially the one that you are thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one lasted way
Way
too
too long.
long.
And this scene lasted way too long. And it lasted so long, I started fast forwarding through it because I just couldn't take it anymore.
Which one was more uncomfortable?
Midsummer was more uncomfortable.
Yeah,
This was
okay.
just annoying. So in the last scene of the movie, it's just her. It's just the blonde girl twitching her hands and standing there as the camera moves towards her. And her hair, her blonde hair is like all in her face.
She
And,
can't see.
and did you know what it reminded me of? As soon as she came to the screen, I was like, this looks like Jennifer from that time that we got caught in a riptide.
You started laughing when we almost died.
It's funny to think about now. Jennifer and I, when we were teenagers, got caught in a riptide. Her hair went completely over her face, and she was just screaming she couldn't see.
It was
And
terrifying.
we got saved.
We were rescued.
We were
And
rescued. But looking back on it, it makes me laugh a little bit. The whole situation. And this girl looked like she was caught in a riptide. Her hair was like all over her face, and she was just, and that's where the movie ended. There was
okay,
no,
so to be fair, it sounds like she's been through some shit. So you can't really like
but yeah,
blame her on her hair placement.
she's been through some shit. For a whole hour, all she did was run around screaming for reasons that she didn't really know about.
It's exhausting.
It's a lot. I will give her that. And she was trying her best. She was the only one that was really bringing her A game.
Well, clearly she was the only one who made it. The blondes always make it,
Right.
except for House of Wax.
Yeah, there was a scene where like, so she, the blonde girl, and this African American actor were in the woods together,
Uh-oh.
and they're looking for one of the nerdy character. There's
Of
all kinds
course.
of tropes in this. And then he disappears. Like she turns around and he's there. She turns her back to him, and then she turns around again and he's gone. And then she's like freaking out. So she's backing up towards this tree, and a body appears behind her hanging there. And like the leg of the person hanging there hits her in the leg and the arm, and she freaks out. I don't know which character that was because there was already somebody missing when this guy disappeared, but it made me uncomfortable. If you know what I mean?
Because
Like,
you didn't know whose body that belonged to, or because she got hit in the arm by a leg?
because I didn't know if it was the nerdy guy
Oh, I see.
or the person of color. And it just made me really uncomfortable. Like, are you implying that this guy was immediately disappeared and then hung by this
Hung.
tree? It was really bizarre. It was things like that. Like, another guy he starts yelling, Laura, Laura, get out of the water. And the girl who's in the room with him, like as he's looking out the window, she's like, who's Laura? And I'm like, yeah, who the fuck is Laura? None of these characters are named Laura. And then he just runs out into the lake and drowns himself, a la Virginia Woolf. Like,
You are for it tonight.
Right. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. So much stuff went on, but then nothing went on. So if you're looking for any sort of accuracy behind the Hinsdale haunting, do not watch this movie. If you're looking to get really like out of your mind drunk or high, watch this movie. Maybe you'll find some hidden meaning that I could not, because 1 out of 10 stars, 1 out of 5. I don't know. It was not good. I thought it was going to be so bad. It's good. Like, I thought it was going to be a slasher film, maybe, because they mentioned it. But
Well, and
even
it's
then,
like specifically horror.
yeah. And even then, if it had been a slasher movie, it would have been better. But there was like literally nothing. I wasn't scared because I never saw any real threat. These people were just
Insane.
like having a collective psychotic break. And that that is the legends and the evidence and the hauntings and the horrible movies that have been made about the Hinsdale house. That is my part.
Wow. Well, I can shine some light on some of those things, but
Please
also not do much good. So
Oh,
we'll take a quick break.
yeah.
All right.
All right. And we're back.
And we are back.
And so after that wild emotional roller coaster of hauntings, I'm ready to hear all about what's actually going on because I have no idea.
Well, I don't either.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, well, that's a spoilers. Let me just tell you some things.
Okay. Tell me
First
all
off,
the things.
I will tell you all of the things. So when I first started this, I could not find anything, like a thing, and I got really aggravated at the Hinsdale House website because they need to have the house history on there, at least just like bare bones basics.
They don't have anything on that website.
Not a thing. Give me the legend. Give me the background. At least give me the Zillow listing. Like
We're bashing
something. I don't know. No, constructive criticism. Please
Yes,
add
we're
a page
just
to your website. It increases your SEO. It does really good for search optimization, but that's
she's
a
a
different podcast.
professional. You need to listen to her.
So that caused me A, to get frustrated, and B, to go down a different route of trying to find the legends, which is not what I usually do. But usually I'm able to find at least when the house was built. So I searched the legends, and then the first legend that I saw was the woman hung on the
Okay.
tree. So I Google searched hanging tree, Hinsdale, New York. And right before I clicked the search button, I thought I'm going to be put on some sort of watch list for this. And that's when I text you. I was like, Kristen,
Your FBI agent is so concerned right now. What is
something
going on with her?
something has happened in Jennifer's life. So when I clicked that search, that actually helped. And it sent me down this rabbit hole of a lot of people knowing the legends, but not a lot of people knowing the truth behind the legends until I found Cassie Nicholas's archives.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you, Cassie. Really, thank you, because you literally did all of my research for me. You wrote my paper.
She did the hard work. We paid her for this paper for our English lit class.
She is the MVP. But she was a local, and she is friends with the previous homeowners. She is friends with Clara. She knows a lot of people around the area, and she got sick of all these lies being spread. So,
Oh,
spoiler. So, she has this, and it is a long thing, and it goes into a lot of stuff. So, you're just going to need to bear with me because it is a ton of information.
we are buckling up for this journey.
But this is like her manifest. Like, you can tell she finished it and she was like, I am done. And that's the last thing I'm publishing for the rest of my life. But
There's a
did
word
good.
for that. I just don't remember what it's called.
One and done.
Magnum opus. Is that what it's called? Am I gonna get something right tonight?
You need to Google that.
I think so. It's the magnum opus, like your like big
Not the
old,
Magna Carta.
not the Magna Carta. Yes, a large and important work of art, music, or literature, especially one regarded as the most important work of an artist or writer.
You are
So
so smart.
I got something right. Cornucopias,
Potpourris.
potpourri, magnum opus, corpse eye. We're getting it.
So I'm going to give you this link to post. And if you are really interested in the full history, go ahead and read her
Magnum opus.
magnum opus, because now I wanted to call it a magnum cornucopia, and that wasn't right.
Nope. Yep.
Yep.
I had to like check one more
Triple check.
time.
Yeah.
My OCD was like, just make sure.
It's fine. But I'm just going to do like a high level overview. I tried to simplify it as best I could, but this is still 7 pages of information. So my simplification is simplifying something that is huge.
You're just giving us the extended spark notes.
Yeah. Yeah. So instead of going, I'll just go into it. I'm going to kind of pull apart the legends.
Mhm.
But I have to start pretty early on, starting with the 1100 Indians that were murdered on the premises, and then a shaman burial site located just above the Hinsdale House. Those are two of the main legends that
Mm.
the current owner also corroborates.
Right. Yeah. He, like I said, his name is
Daniel,
his name is Daniel Klaus Claes. And yeah, he says that it all started in 1799 with the massacre.
right. Well, we're just going to step back in time a little bit. You remember in the Bell Witch when I mentioned the mound builders?
Mhm.
Well, they're going to be mentioned again, obviously, because, this is East Coast. The mound builders were in the area, and that's common knowledge. In fact, one of the only mound builder tribes found in history is in Allegheny, New York.
Mm.
It's believed that they were extinguished by tribes that traveled to northeastern America following the waterways to make a settlement. After the fall of the Aligwe, I'm so sorry about my pronunciations.
Look, we're not scholars.
mm,
We sound things out.
so after the fall of these people in the mid 17th century, the Erie people also fell victim to a genocide by the Iroquois.
Okay.
Iroquois corpses. There was also a 5-year war launched on the Erie people by the Seneca for aiding another tribe in a fur trade issue. So
Okay.
it kind of goes back. There are many notable mounds that you can find locally in Allegheny, Olean, Conewango, Wongo, I'm so sorry, and Randolph. Also important to note that there are several mounds throughout Western New York and also stemming south. I can attest to this. We actually have our own Indian mounds in like mid North Georgia.
Oh, nice.
The Etowah Indian mounds. You should check them out
Mm.
next time you're here.
I should.
So Cassie goes on to mention that mound sites are so historically important, and the soil in them is so delicate usually that they're usually owned by a local government to help maintain and protect and preserve the area. So if they knew about it, they would probably end up purchasing the site if it was actually there.
Okay.
So, with all of those mound sites in the Northeast, none of them are located on a hilltop in Hinsdale, New York.
So kind of debunked.
It is debunked. Rumors of a chief's burial in several mounds have swirled around for several years since the quote by a local was published in the newspaper, and that's where that started.
Mm.
Countless historians have attempted to combat this rumor, and despite efforts, it continues to live on. As recent as 2016, publications are still telling the false story that the house was built on over 800 Native American graves and the site of a horrific massacre, but that never happened.
Well, heard it here. We're stopping this today.
I'm
We
sure the
said it.
rumors will stop immediately.
Yes.
So Native Americans usually settled in valleys near water. Without a source of water, life would be extremely difficult, obviously. Hilltops were usually used as protection, not only from, the weather, the elements, but it also was used as a vantage point. And there were several small footpaths along the hills that were used by tribes, but there was no village within the hilltop surrounding the house.
Mm.
And to add, she had a geologist friend by trade accompany her to the property across the hilltop homestead. And he did not locate a single mound.
Mm.
So on the website, Cassie also has images of actual mounds that are in New York.
Oh, cool.
They're very pretty. They're very nice pictures, but they're absolutely obvious. Like you can tell. So for the massacre, this looks to have stemmed from a newspaper article published by the Patriot and Free Press, September 2009. And I'm going to try and read you this article to the best I can. There's a lot of names in here that I'm going to stumble over, so just please forgive me.
We're all friends here.
Judge gently. Paranormal investigator Father Michael Rambacher began the morning filming with a brief history. In 1737, local Native Americans were part of the 7 tribes of the Iroquois Confederation. The Senecas sent a proclamation to Alexander Hamilton of the Continental Congress stating that they were actively opposed to the formation of the United States. At that time, there were 4 other villages in the Iroquois Confederation who would not sign the proclamation. According to Rambacher, the Iroquois Confederation became so upset and ordered those villages destroyed. During the campaign, over 800 men, women, and children were killed in the area that is now Main Street, Hinsdale. Rambacher went on to state that those casualties are what laid the ground for spiritual disturbances in the Hinsdale area. Rambacher told participants that ancient burial grounds lie within 250 feet of the Hinsdale House. He discovered them 9 years ago, but had not been back since.
Gotcha. Okay. This
So
didn't come up in the Hamilton musical. I'm just saying.
well, let me tell you why.
Oh, okay.
She like reamed this article. This girl has she was feeling a certain type of way.
She has boss energy.
So true. So the 5 nations were formed between approximately 1570 and 1600 and did later become the 6 nations in 1722, but at no time was there ever 7. Next,
Gotcha.
Alexander Hamilton was born January 11th, 1757. The Continental Congress met from 1774 to 1789. So based on the article, the nations, 6 nations, 7 nations, contacted him 20 years before he was born.
Yeah, that doesn't really add up.
Also, that would have the natives contacting the Continental Congress 37 years before it was even formed. And to continue this article, or in this article, Rambacher was quoted during the campaign, over 800 men, women, children were killed in the area that is now Main Street. He went on to state that those casualties, the big massacre with the 800 men, women, and children, is what laid the groundwork for the spiritual disturbances. And that's just also completely not true. There's no evidence or historical remnants that a massacre exists in history in the valley of Hinsdale, New York, or on the hilltop at all.
I mean, that's just interesting. She's got the dates. She's got the receipts.
Based on what she has provided, I would say the Native American hauntings based on a massacre
Not
just
true.
didn't happen. So there is a legend that can be found within the Historical Society of Cattaraugus County, which is where Hinsdale sits inside of.
Okay.
In 1807, many individuals, both white settlers and Native Americans, fell victim to some sort of deadly disease. There's absolutely no telling what it was. It's said that an Indian squaw that had recently returned to the area of Hiso, which is mentioned earlier in her article, it's another part of New York. She returned to the area of Hiso after being gone for a great deal of time to come care for the sick. And she simply stated that her loved ones would pass from the sickness. She ended up predicting correctly, and she was denounced by her tribe as a witch and burned alive.
That is awful. She was just telling y'all how it is. And like she came to help you and care for your sick. And she's like, you know what? This is a really bad disease. I think a lot of you are gonna die. It's not her fault.
Being brutally honest has not been taken kindly since the beginning of time.
I guess not.
So, even though there have been consistent rumors of a curse placed on top of Hilltop where the farm stands, the Iroquois refute them entirely. She had many conversations with the tribe, and they were like, we have no record of any sort of burial, any sort of anything in our history.
The only witch that we suspected in our myths we burned. So how could anybody put a curse?
What was the tribe that you had mentioned where it was Dark Owl?
The
That was
Seneca.
the Seneca.
But
Interesting.
he was part of the Seneca tribe. He was traveling to Hillsdale to track his ancestry
I
when he
see.
came across the shaman who supposedly told him about the deaths of their people.
Well, that's what I found with the Native American
Angle.
side of things. There was another legend that an innkeeper murdered people there. Like the
Okay.
farmhouse was turned into an inn and he would murder people.
Oh, I
I
didn't see
think
that
this
one.
kind of goes hand in hand with the brothers that
Murderers,
were murderers.
stagecoach robbers.
But this specific one takes us down a long rabbit hole of owners, and I'll try to summarize it the best I can, but it is a lot because it is an old property and there have been a lot of owners. But it also kind of helps take care of some stories that happen later on down the road. So just
Mhm.
try and stick with me a little bit. So in 1813, Lewis Wood settled into the area now known as Hinsdale, New York, followed by his brother Willick, which is
Really?
spelled like wheel lot 7 years ago. Wheelock Wood settled on 100 acres in Township near the first sawmill that was erected in 1814, owned by Emory Yates Sr. Wheelock would come to settle in an area very near to Yates.
Hmm.
His brother, Colonel Emory would follow, moving to Hinsdale in 1817. And by the year 1830, Wheelock owned 249 acres, and
Wow.
he was doing very well, farming and running a tannery business, and also building a house that is no longer standing but was south of the current homestead. Both
Hmm.
Emory and Willickwood were also veterans of the War of 1812.
Hmm.
So in 1853, two brothers purchased properties from Wood, and they were David and Charles Everts. Both men purchased the area of the Hilltop Farm, which is, I say Hilltop, it's also another name for Hinsdale.
Right.
It's believed that David Everts built the homestead viewed today as the actual standing.
Hinsdale House.
Yeah. And his brother Charles moved into the original homestead just south of the current standing structure. Throughout the next 4 years, several purchases in the surrounding area took place, and it was not uncommon for the time, though the standing structures remained with the Everts brother. So they kind of shuffled around the property, but they still kept the actual houses for
Got
themselves.
you. Could these be the brothers that maybe are being misconstrued in legends?
Hold that thought.
Okay.
In the year 1858, the Everts brothers sold their properties to an Alfred Burton, and they moved to Iowa.
Oh, bye.
In 1861, Alfred Burton's property was sold by George and Elizabeth Burton, so assumably a family member,
Mhm.
to a newly immigrated Irishman, Michael
I'm gonna say McMahon.
McMahon. Is that
Yes,
what you're saying?
I'm clicking on. I clicked on your link, so I see where.
Oh, you're just following along.
Yes, it's like a little presentation. I like it a lot. Michael Mahan,
McMahon? McMahon sounds right, but
McMahon,
that's McMahon. Um,
Vince
Michael.
McMahon. No, I'm just kidding.
So they sold the property to Michael McMahon and his wife, Catherine. which tracks because the house actually sits on McMahon Road.
Okay.
So over time, several of the generations of the McMahons lived in the home, loved the house until approximately 1971. So that's over 100 years.
Yeah, that is a long time to be in possession of one family.
Mhm.
Wow.
When she referenced her realty tycoon, Donna Rice, purchased it.
Oh, Donna, I just picture her with like big old poofy hair and a smart business suit.
Bright yellow.
Bright yellow.
Mhm.
Yes. Love it. We
Because
love
it's
you,
the
Donna.
70s. So if you look at a map from 1916, you can see that son of Michael McMahon, Dennis McMahon, owned the property
Okay.
with both buildings still standing. If you look at that same map, you can see a smaller building sitting just south of the farm, but it was vacant at the time. And based on a discussion with historians from the area, it's assumed that it was probably burnt down.
Mm,
But at no time in history were either the farmhouse, the surrounding buildings, or the vacant farm or vacant home belonging to Charles Everts or his kin ever used as an inn or hotel or anything like that.
right.
So this is where it gets a little complicated because apparently when the deed was pulled for this parcel, there
Mhm.
was a clerical error and a family, the Lefevers, Lefevers, Lefevers,
Lefebvre.
Lefeves,
The Laffies. Laffies.
the Lefevers. You can send me the correct pronunciation. I will gladly accept it.
We'll correct
Um,
ourselves later.
the family was included on the deed, even though they didn't actually own that specific parcel. They actually owned a property on Yardman and Emerson, and that can be validated looking at a map from 1853.
Mm.
So, what happened with Cassie was she was given the actual original deed to the house. Like, she was given the real deed from Clara, and
Okay.
then she got the parcel record from the city, and they didn't match. And this
Oh,
parcel
okay.
record had been used for a long time, like it had been pulled previously or something like that. And you can tell based on the legends. Like there's been
Mm.
some attempts at some historical accuracy, but your report is only as good as the data that you're reading from.
Right,
So if
right.
your data is wrong, then your report's going to be wrong. So she looked
Exactly.
at the two and she goes, wait a second, this doesn't match up because the Lefevers don't own this property. They owned a property up the road.
Right.
So, just to be sure that there is no mix up, first off, their property is, you know how I love my Google Maps, an 8-minute drive from the Hinsdale house.
Got you.
So, it's not like a skip and a hop, it's more like a brisk
It's
walk.
the jaunt.
Yes. So, they're not close.
Okay.
But let me tell you a little bit about them.
Okay.
In 1832, they settled into the Haskell Flats area and they built a hotel on what is now Haskell Road.
Mm.
Two of their nephews also built farms on Emerson and Yardman. Those are the properties that I mentioned earlier. In 1844, John Lefevre, I'm so sorry, sold the hotel to Ambrose Salisbury.
I love that name.
I knew you would.
I love that name. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with Ambrose. Ambrose Salisbury. What a
It is.
lovely steak.
It is. And many of the Lefevres ended up moving back to Reading, New York, except Lewis, who stayed until he died and was incredibly loved by the community.
Oh.
He was known for his philanthropy
Mhm.
and just really contributed to the little town. So the Edwards family later moved into the Lefevre farms, and now the Emersons currently live on the properties today.
Gotcha.
The site of the Lefevre/Ambrose Hotel is currently on Haskell Road in Cuba, New York. Did we know that there
What?
was a Cuba, New
I
York?
did not know that there's a Cuba, New York.
I didn't know that
Wow.
either. But at no time in history did any murders occur, or did any of the Lefevres ever live on the Hilltop farm.
Okay, so no murders kind of like even adjacent to the area.
No, there, it's like any of the speculation of maybe it's the same family since it's on the same,
Right,
sheet. No, it's not even close to the same parcel. It can't be the same.
right.
Dennis McMahon was deeded the Hinsdale property on February 3rd, 1912. On April 20th, 1912, he was also very briefly the owner of the Edwards farm before deeding it to John McMahon. And this quick exchange of deed changes and kind of the shuffling might explain the discrepancy on the Lefevre/Edwards farm
Right.
deed.
And it would also bolster the rumors that like the Hinsdale property is
Mhm.
so haunted that nobody wants to live there for long.
Except for the McMahons who lived there for 100 years.
Right. No, casually.
There was also a legend that a stagecoach would pass by the farm, and it kind of goes like this isn't exactly your robbery highwayman story, but I'm going to get there in a second.
Okay.
So the current owner, I'm just going to call him Daniel because I'm not even going to attempt that last name, released a publication titled Hinsdale House, An American Haunting, and he co-authored it with Professor Tim Joyce. In the publication, it states, quote, in the mid-19th century, Hinsdale not only was the logical place for a stagecoach stop due to its comparatively metropolitan size. Not true.
Okay.
Prior to 1844, the stop for travelers within the Hinsdale area limits would have been the Norton House, owned by James B. Norton, later dubbed the Temperance Hotel, run by Julius and Nancy Edwards until the hotel burned down in 1912. Or, if they didn't stop there, they would have taken the Haskell Flats route, which apparently was heavily advertised, and stopped by to see our little hotel friends in Cuba, New York.
All right.
So Daniel goes on to state, quote, that inn, what would come to be called the Hinsdale House, had two names for the owners, Ian and Richard. Because record keeping at the time was not as meticulous as it has grown to be today, the last name of these two very evil brothers remains unknown or in dispute. Ian and Richard were rapists and thieves using the Hinsdale House as a spider web to attract their victims.
Mm.
The very worst thing a traveler could let these two miscreants see was that they were wealthy. A beautiful necklace or an expensive watch could easily be a traveler's death warrant. Seeing those items on a guest signaled to these brothers that this was a person to rob, perhaps sexually assault, and drag to the tree for hanging. So the hilltop apparently is very difficult to reach, even with modern day vehicles.
Yeah.
You're looking unsure.
I'm just seeing where you're going with this.
Okay. You look like I'm about to hit you in the face. I'm so sorry.
No. It's okay.
Carrie is very adamant that there is no way that this could be a stagecoach stop because it would have been a task just to get up the hill, like in general. And that's not even accounting for any weight, people, trunks, luggage, bodies on the coach itself.
Right.
Also, the mention that record keeping at the time was not as meticulous, like that's not true. The records back then were extremely meticulous. Land law and deed law were absolutely vital in interactions, following something called the Holland Law Land Contract. Apparently, it like made them, but also like I go through census records and all of that. I honestly feel like they are more detailed than some of the records that we have today.
Right. And I feel like saying, oh, yeah, it was the 1800s or whatever.
Yeah,
It wasn't that well kept. It's just like an excuse to like deter people from doing their own research and just believe what you're saying.
right. Not a
But they
fan.
They didn't expect Cassie, and they didn't expect this podcast. And we're
And
here to set the record straight.
Cassie, lay down the law.
You know what? Also, the story, just a little bit of Ian and Richard owning this Hinsdale House Inn and like robbing people and everything, feels like a total ripoff of
Mhm.
William Burke and William Hare,
Mhm.
the Edinburgh grave robbers and innkeeping killers, which is a real story. If you
I was
haven't
thinking, oh, go ahead.
if you haven't listened to Tenfold More Wicked on the Exactly Right network, here's a little free plug because she tells this story really well and very accurately. But this seems like a total ripoff of that story. Like they were just trying to make it their own.
It reminded me of the story. I can't remember the woman's name where she got caught. It was her and another, like it was two men. I think you know which one I'm talking about.
Yes, and she
Like
buried the
she,
bodies in her backyard in her garden, right?
oh no, they had like a trap door that would,
Oh
and she,
no.
when she, before she got hung, she was like, if anyone has a message for the devil, tell me now.
Oh no, I am not thinking about the same story. I'm thinking about the woman, the like seemingly nice elderly woman who would take people in and then like
Oh,
kill them and poison them for their like social security money and then bury them in the backyard and say they went missing.
that was like a spinoff of a scary stories to tell in the dark story.
There's a lot of innkeepers killing people, I guess, in the world. Kind of makes you rethink bed and breakfasts a little bit.
Lavinia Fisher.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that one. I have to look into it.
What? They did it on My Favorite Murder.
Oh,
It's
I
intense.
maybe I have heard it. I've heard every episode of that show, so maybe I just have blocked it out of my mind because that sounds horrific.
But this, like
Okay,
the innkeepers murdering their people, their residents, it reminded me a lot of it. But
gotcha.
that didn't happen.
It was all
Um,
fake.
it was all fake. On the 1853 map of Hinsdale, New York, McMahon Road can be seen in its original form, leading down to what is Emerson Road.
Mhm.
And by 1867, McMahon Road had been dismissed to a small dead end road due to poor travel conditions.
Okay.
It seems like McMahon Road was an afterthought, not a main stagecoach road. But stagecoaches never ran over that hill. If you look at the travel routes, they ran from present day New York Route 16 and beyond, and also the present day Haskell Road through the Haskell Flats Valley.
Mm.
So that kind of covers the innkeeper and also the brothers,
Okay.
um, because there wasn't a stagecoach to rob.
Gotcha.
So there's also a legend that there have been a large number of accidental deaths on the property. Daniel, in his book, the same book, An American Haunting, also goes to mention an unusual number of accidental deaths and events of serious injury are also associated with the Hinsdale house, including the untimely and tragic death of 16-year-old Alfred Warren, who, while helping his father cut down a branch on the site in 1942, was struck in the head when the buzzsaw they were using to complete the task snagged, hurling the saw with immense force into his head, causing traumatic injury that snuffed out his life 3 hours later in the nearby Cuba Memorial Hospital.
Hey, it's my buzzsaw boy. You have
Yeah,
a date and a name.
I do. Alfred frequently makes his eternal youthful presence known to those who stay a while in the home. A look at the simple number of people who have died on the property of unnatural causes over the course of its existence as a non-native location is statistically out of proportion to the standard statistical rate of danger in the rural land. That is
That is
so
a
long of a
quote.
sentence.
That is a lot. He could have cut that down a little bit.
So that quote follows information on the incorrect 1970s pull of the deed. So to correct this, Alfred Warren Emerson passed away from a buzzsaw accident in 1942 at 16 years of age. He did die in the Cuba Memorial Hospital after the accident, which happened on his Emerson homestead on Emerson Road. He did not suffer this horrific accident on or anywhere near the Hinsdale property.
Got you. So this horrible thing did happen, which just, oh my gosh, this poor family and this poor 16-year-old kid. That's awful. But it has nothing to do with Hinsdale House.
Correct. She has a clipping of the newspaper article from June 25th, 1942. Hinsdale school student fatally hurt when struck by buzzsaw. And you read through it, and honestly, Alfred seems like he was really going places. He was on track to be the valedictorian of his school. It was just, he had a lot of stuff going for him. And it's very sad that it happened,
Yeah.
but it didn't happen at Hinsdale House.
Mm.
Also, there have never been any reports of unnatural deaths on the property of Hinsdale Farm. The closest issue was the murder of Danny J. Simpson in 1999 by his brother David A. Simpson, which is what you
Hey,
referenced. Yeah.
yeah.
I love how
Listen,
excited you get.
I'm just excited that like some things are kind of matching up, even if they're like getting shot down. At least like something is kind of crossing over with what I
Yeah.
found.
After an argument, David shot Danny at close range with a gun. Danny perished 1 hour later at the Olean General Hospital. David was sentenced on January 8th, 2000, and this took place on a property close to Hinsdale Farm and has also been mentioned as a haunt of some sorts, like something is tied to it.
Right.
But honestly, it didn't even happen on the property. So she also has the picture of the hanging tree, and the rumors kind of stuck around the tree until around 2009 when the tree actually fell over.
Oh no.
But it grew on the corner of McMahon Road and Wagner Road, and the rumors go something like this based on Daniel's claims that the tree was instrumental in ending an quote immense number of victims 190 years ago.
Mm.
However, it was not large enough based on a dendrology study. And dendrologists, in case you don't know, are the people who go in and look at tree rings, to summarize. They do a
Oh,
lot more than
cool.
that, but
They're tree doctors.
they study plants and trees. They did a study in 1865, and she says it's listed in current released research, but she didn't have the research on there. But it pretty much just says the tree wasn't big enough to hang people back in the day.
Like it wouldn't have supported.
Right. It wouldn't have been that big. I mean, it's like the picture is on the website, and if you look at it, it's a creepy tree.
Mm.
I don't know physics of much less of hanging people. Like, I don't know limb width plus weight of body equals what. But if you subtract like 200 years from that tree, I don't imagine it's very big. But also to add that in the year 1865, the McMahon family owned the Hinsdale homestead. And not only was there no Richard or Ian ever, the McMahon family were definitely not serial killers, and they lived there again for over 100 years.
Right. They were nice people. You leave them alone.
So this leads on to the assumption that no one was hanged from the tree, and the claims come from a misinterpretation done by a famed psychic, Alex Tanis, on April 13th, 1974, while he was on site aiding Father Alphonsus Trebald.
Ooh, another just great name.
Alphonsus.
Alphonsus.
It's a good one. So this brings us to 1974.
Hey.
Here we are back in the 1970s. Are we feeling groovy yet?
We're feeling so dandy.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'm talking about the Dandy family next. That was clever, you.
I'm so clever.
So clever. So when the Dandy family lived in the home, Clara, who is now known by her maiden name, Clara Miller, asked for help with the unexplainable things happening in the home. Again, quoting An American Haunting, it states, the official Catholic rite of exorcism took place April 13th, 1974, and was conducted by Father Alphonsus Trebold. The world knows that much about the Hinsdale House. The drama is thick with this.
Mm.
Clara met with Father Alphonsus, who was a theology and religion professor and exorcist of St. Bonaventure University. He spent a lot of time with the family and enlisted the help of a noted psychic, Alex Tanis, while he was on a speaking engagement at St. Bonaventure University.
Mm-hmm.
On April 13th, 1974, Tanis, a film crew of New York University students, and Father Trebold ventured to the home in attempt to, quote, de-psych the property.
De-psych. Okay.
That's what the psychic wrote in his
I
notes.
know. I'm just saying. Okay, we're gonna de-psych the home.
Many are stating that this was, in fact, an exorcism done by Father Trebold, but it's not true. Father Trebold stated that you cannot, quote, exorcise a building, only a person.
Yeah, and even if like one of the Dandy family members were like supposedly possessed and they were doing an exorcism on the family, do you know how hard it is to get the Catholic Church to give you an exorcism right? It's so hard. They really don't like mess around with that. You have to have a really good reason with a lot of evidence for them to like say, okay, you can do an exorcism. Like I know that people think like, oh, we're just throwing exorcisms right, left, and center.
You
We
fill
do
out the
whatever.
paperwork and it gets stamped.
Right. It takes
Approved.
7 business days for somebody to come out and cleanse your soul, but like it takes a lot.
Well, wait a second. Nick gets it done all the time.
He gets spiritual cleansing. He
He
has
knows the spa.
he has the church on speed dial. He's like, look, look, I'm dealing with the pure evil of the world. You guys got to give me my personal priest.
Here I am again. The Dandy family agrees with those statements that there was not an exorcism done on that day. It was a cleansing. Tanis wrote about his expedition to the Hinsdale House in his publication Beyond Coincidence, which was published in 1976. There is also a transcript of the recording readily available from the Tanis Foundation. You can find them at alextanis.org. And I'm just going to read you a little bit of it.
Sure.
Specifically, it's a PDF and it's written in that perfect 1970s type font. And the specific Dandy property is on pages 1-4. So he goes into talking about the Dandy estate and where it's located and how over the years it's kind of been known for some unsettling presence, and the presence of at least one poltergeist had been confirmed some 5 years prior to his arrival. His goal and that of his partner, Father Alphonsus Trebold of St. Bonaventure University, was to investigate these restless spirits and, if possible, to rid the house of them once and for all. He talks about the homeowner saying that the disturbances began as noises without action, such as the sound of a window slamming when no window could have slammed, things falling when they really didn't fall, and then they had action without noise. So a lamp breaking and they didn't hear anything. And then finally, some sort of creature jumped on Beth. And she says that that is what frightened her the most.
Gotcha.
He mentions that soon after he enters the house, he feels spirits, and him and Father Trebold make their way through the rooms with the tape recorder. He acquaints himself with his surroundings, and the longer he's there, the more absorbed in the house's history he becomes. He says, until finally its tumultuous past began to speak through me. He says, quote, a girl lying in bed calling for help, getting no response from her mother and father who are arguing. I'm now very cold. The chill is getting even stronger. The birds will remain quiet as I leave and draw energy from the room. There are other energies in the room which are also affecting me. The vibrations are those of a very elderly woman in her 90s. The energies are of certain things that have disquieted her over the years. The other energy is that of a girl, I would say 12 or 13, who was raped and killed. The young girl was raped by a man who was a bachelor. Again, the chills are hitting me. I'm picking up a young man, 18 or 19, who was killed in an accident. For some reason, all of these energies are converging here. There's also been the death of a man in this room, a death which was a drastic death of agony, not a murder or suicide. What I'm going to do now is pick up all of this energy. All right, the energy has now been picked up.
I just,
So
is he miming this?
No, he's dictating, like he has a recorder and he typed
Yeah.
out what was left over in the recorder.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I picture him like, I'm going to pick up the energy, and then just like scooping it, like miming, scooping up some
Accidentally
things.
like scoops up a couple of dust monies.
Like pretends he's like almost dropped something, picks it back up.
Oh
Yeah.
shit. As you see the lights go out, the energy is forcing me to say that it does not want to leave. The energy is here, but her fiance had a very tragic death. The energies are sorrow energies, tragic. The person, the man, drowned, and the woman has never gotten over it. The woman locked herself in this room from time to time and would not come out at all. At this point, I began conversing directly with the spirits or energies involved, directing them to release their sorrows, and in doing so, to release their consciousness from the confines of the house. So he goes into this attempt to get the spirits to let go, and it
Mhm.
apparently becomes very intense.
Right, because it
And
doesn't want to. It's like hanging on.
right, he's saying, you have to let go. He's having a hard time breathing. You can hear him gasping for air on the tape.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says, now the energy reaches out to make physical contact with me. The burn is there. I know you burned me. I realize it, but I'm going to take you with me no matter what happens. I'm holding on to you. And then later, Father Tribold kind of described what he had gone through. And he says, at first, you were speaking in a very calm way, sort of commenting on the different vibrations you got. Then all of a sudden, you stopped for a moment, and then you were completely unaware of us. You started talking to that entity that was there, a young blind girl. It was obvious that the spirit didn't want to leave. You were saying with more force each time that it should leave, and then parts of your body began to contort, especially
Mm.
your face and your hands. So he wraps all this up to say, after my attempt to direct the spirits away from the dandy house, Father Tribold performed an exorcism. And I don't know if it's because of his lack of knowledge. Like, I didn't know that you can exorcise a house or
He
what.
just
He
calls it
does.
that.
It could be wrong name. He says, evidently, our combined efforts worked. The poltergeist activity ceased forever. The burn that I spoke of on the tape, it was real. When I unbuttoned my shirt, I saw a raw red patch on my side, about the size and shape of a 50-cent piece. And that's
Wow.
where he ends the story. Again, you can find a link to that on the site. He has some pretty interesting stuff. Like he goes over some of the places that he visited, and it's pretty neat.
That is cool. Also, I mean, if he was speaking to a little blind girl saying, "You're coming with me," might have been really kind of scary for her. You're
It could have
kidnapping
been
this
scary.
ghost.
Yeah. Especially if she doesn't know that she's dead.
Right. Maybe just say, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna take you to a better place. Let's go this way." Like,
Well, I almost wonder if it was not the blind girl he was speaking to, but the fiance of the man who drowned,
mm,
who would lock herself in the room. Like, I mean, there's no telling.
still, just be a little bit more polite to ghosts. Is all I'm saying.
No
All you
demanding.
ghosts, yeah, all you ghost hunters and psychics.
But I did think that it was interesting that he said that it worked and that all the poltergeist activity stopped.
Yeah, because in the stories that I have read, the Dandy family does say that it did work for a little while, but then the activity started up again, and that's why they moved
Mm,
out.
I see. So Cassie pretty much just goes on to say that Father Trebold was no stranger to the study of, the darker areas. He's noted to perform several exorcisms within his lifetime. He also has an archive on the St. Bonaventure website. If you want to look through some of the stories that he's covered, it's, again, pretty neat. He's done a lot of exorcisms, but he did not perform one on the Dandy home. And the family confirms this. A local newspaper headline ran with that, story, and it kind of just spread from there.
Yeah.
So based on, after I got off of Cassie's site, because I kind of stopped, well, she stopped there because she's like, if you want to know about what happened to Clara, read her book.
Right. And
I
did
not know.
Sorry, Clara.
But I did kind of want to go into the current owner. And I'm just going to end on this note. I'm going to share my screen with you in a second. But based on, I went on to the tax assessor website, my second favorite site to go on to.
Okay.
And you're able to see like the purchase history up to a certain point, whatever records they have digitalized.
Right.
And you can see that Daniel purchased the property from a Kenneth Rice, who was the executor for Donna Rice.
Our tycoon of realty.
Yep, Miss Donna. He had 2 purchases in 2017 and also again in 2019. So what I thought was interesting was this portion right here. So it says select the description which most accurately describes the use of the property at the time of sale. Kristen, can you read what that says?
Oh, it says entertainment. Oh my gosh, this guy is a charlatan. This guy and Zach Bagans are best friends. What the heck?
The defense rests.
Just bang the gavel. We're sending him to ghost jail. Oh my gosh.
I saw that. I was like, she's going to lose her ever-loving mind.
Listen, okay, because this is what is getting me. We're like, I know that like ghost stories and ghost shows and ghost tours are fun, right? But we're running into so many stories where it feels like people are just making, and I'm not a skeptic, but this like our research is making me feel like a skeptic because I keep running into these things where I want to believe so bad. And then here comes Daniel buying this house for entertainment and spreading a whole bunch of lies. I'm mad.
I am
specifically
upset.
at Daniel.
All right, so haunted or hoax?
A hoax.
Oh no.
Did you? I mean, are you shocked?
There's no like visible evidence that you saw.
No. The EVPs were. See, that's the other thing is that I keep running into this thing where I'm not finding a lot of pictures of orbs or a lot of video evidence of people. Like there's some things on YouTube and people are like, oh my God, did you see that? But it's just themselves freaking themselves out, Like me, I would be like, if I were in the Hinsdale House woods alone with a video, with a recording on my iPhone, yeah, I would hear something and be like, oh my God, did you hear that? And like pee my pants and then run. But there's nothing solid as far as like mist or, give me a fucking, outline of a person at least, with Eloise, those pictures were so compelling. Like that photographic evidence is what I was looking for Hinsdale House, especially when it's so like popular, and there was just nothing. And
you seem so bummed.
It just makes me mad because I was like going into this like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a really good one. This is going to be it. And then like, I was already annoyed with the Hinsdale House movie. And then Paranormal Lockdown, I got those EVPs and they were really interesting. And I did hear the footsteps and, there was banging around. There was kind of like poltergeist activity, I would say, going on. I didn't think it was a demon, but I could see it. But just going through all the stuff that you found, and then to see that he bought it for the purpose to like make it some sort of entertainment attraction. I don't know. It's disappointing. I wanted this to be a haunt, and maybe because the psychic was talking about this like 90-year-old, and he didn't say people were murdered, but they were dying of disease. Maybe there is some sort of like McMahon ancestry that's like not malevolently haunting. Is that how you say it?
Malevolent.
Malevolent.
Man, the struggle is real with words today.
Like, it's not a negative presence. It's just
So
maybe
that's where I was, yeah, that's where I was going to go. Was I don't know if it is a hoax, because they did have a psychic and a father come out and like cleanse this house because they were having issues. And just like you
right.
said, the issues worked, like it helped for a little bit, but then they came back. And it seems like even Alex said it, where he was like, for some reason they're like congregating in this house and he couldn't really figure out why. So I don't necessarily think that it's a hoax. I just don't think that it's haunted by these specific legends that Mr. Daniel is sharing. I
Yeah.
think it's very similar to the gatekeeper's daughter, where there's a
Something is going
story.
on.
Yeah, there's a story there, but we
Jennifer's trying to
just
make
don't
me
know
feel
it.
better.
No, I had found my stance before we started, because I mean, I get to know the history of it, so I kind of have a like a
Yeah.
little preview. I would have changed my mind if you had have had like, here's a picture, here's a shadow. People are seeing these shadows outside, but nobody can get it on camera. You know, there's all these flies. I did see something about bees.
No.
Did you see that?
No.
Daniel is adamant when he bought the house, he had to have like thousands of bees rehomed because they had made, talk about worse than BAM flies or freaking BAM mosquitoes, BAM bees.
Listen, the pure joy on your face right as you said that.
Because I didn't see it coming until it left my mouth.
No, but bees would be a horrific nightmare.
But he's saying that like all these index insects are just like showing up at his house, which I guess they do in New York. I don't know.
It's a countryside.
I think that there might be something there. We just don't know the
Yeah.
history of it.
I don't know. I feel so disheartened.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's Daniel's.
All right.
Shame
So
on
he
you.
is, in my head, he's sitting right up there with the Lutzes. Like,
Yeah. And also, so like with the psychic experiencing all those things, I can kind of lean towards like a poltergeist. And also, like, for all it's worth, I know that Ed and Lorraine Warren have had their
mhm,
flaws when it comes to certain investigations, but all around, I really do think that Lorraine has some sort of connection. Like, I do
mhm.
think that she's pretty legit. So I do believe her when she says that like she felt something in the house. And she said that she felt some like heavy tension and like she couldn't breathe.
And even her daughter said that it was the whole city. It wasn't just this property.
Right.
So maybe it is something with the city. I mean, the East Coast is old. Like, and
Right.
who's to say that there isn't something under there that's just kind of settled at this point?
True.
So I don't
Okay.
know. I'm not
Possibly.
going to say hoax.
Okay. You're on the fence.
I am skeptical of a recurring haunting.
All right. I am still kind of bitter. and, and I have one toe in hoax. And then the rest of my body is possible poltergeist activity. Okay.
So that's it.
That's it for this week.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Listen, it's not I want people to be honest and like take care of these properties and not think of them as like a cash cow.
Like a
Like
fun house.
like Eloise, they do like legitimate like haunted house during Halloween. And I just think that's so disrespectful. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you're going to buy it, don't say that you're going to be using it solely for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying. Not a sermon, just a thought.
Just a suggestion.
um,
So, what are we doing next week?
Next week's episode, we are taking us down a country road to a place we belong, West Virginia.
Love it.
If you didn't, get the reference,
Kristen will sing it to you sometime.
Yeah, next week. But yeah, so that's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we get a little bit more of a solid haunting. But it's time for a sage moment. What's your sage moment?
I learned a fun fact.
Oh my goodness, what is your fun fact?
Kristen hates my fun facts.
I love your fun facts.
Did you know
Mm-hmm.
that towels are the leading cause of dry skin?
No, what? Why are they? What are you talking? I don't.
What do you use it for?
Rubbing my skin, drying.
After drying off your skin?
Oh, listen. Listen, I'm an esthetician, and so I was like, no, towels like really buff you, so like you get the dry skin off.
It's sinking
Oh
in now.
no.
I didn't get it at first either.
I got it. If you
And
guys
then
got it within like seconds, then you're doing better than I am.
Joe called it a slow burn.
It has a good long-term payoff.
All right. What is your sage moment?
My stage moment is not a joke or a funny story or anything. My stage moment is this is the first weekend in a long time that I have nothing planned. So before holiday season gets really crazy, I'm gonna do some self-care. I'm
Mm,
gonna take a nice hot bath. I'm gonna do some skincare with a face mask and some exfoliating things. I'm gonna maybe read a book, which is shocking all of you right now, I know. But I will actually read a book. Maybe I'll
it will
finish
not be
Amityville.
Amityville.
I don't think so, but we can dream. Um, and I'm just gonna take it easy, and I'm looking forward to it.
That sounds great. That sounds very cleansing, which is
Yes,
what a sage moment should be.
yes. I won't be cleansing like Nick, but I will be cleansing in some other ways.
We still have to work on getting our fathers on speed dial.
Yes.
That came out weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, we want to hear all about your ghost adventures or misadventures. We want to know where you'd like us to cover next. Any suggestions are much welcomed. We've enjoyed doing the suggestions that have been thrown our way. They've been super neat. We also need to know any ghost tours that we need to go on because we are planning out 2022 for our ghost tours. And so having some
Yes.
on the books would be very helpful. And you can send all of those to hauntedorhoaxpod@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Haunted or Hoax Pod, Twitter @H or H Pod, and Facebook @Haunted or Hoax.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It's a huge help to get the word out, get us connected with new people to join the Haunted or Hoax community. And we just really like to read your hopefully kind words. Or if you
Yeah,
have any critiques, we like to hear those too.
we want to know it all.
Yes.
So, yeah, we will see y'all in West Virginia next week.
You'll hear from us then.
Mountain Mama, take me home.
Take me home right now.
All right, bye.
Bye.